welcome to Tesseract Talks, the place where we put the spotlight on latest technology trends. I'm your host, Marko, the founder and CEO of Tesseract Analytics, and today we are discussing what it really means to become an AI-first company and why growth depends on redesigning work, not just deploying tools. My guest is Neil Dhar, Senior Vice President and Global Managing Partner at IBM Consulting and the co-author of the latest IBM Institute for Business Value global study on AI-first enterprises. Neil, great to have you with us. How are you?
Hello, Marco, and thank you for having me on today. I'm really excited to be here.
Great. So, Neil, let's start by you first giving us a bit of insights from your conversations with CEOs globally. Are most organizations truly transforming with AI, or they're simply adding it onto existing structures?
Marco, that's a really good question, and I run across that a lot. So maybe let me just kind of level set it on a couple of things. So in my role, I have the pleasure and privilege to see a lot of management teams and boards and talk about AI transformation, what AI is going to look like over the next 3 to 5 years. So I'll give you maybe a little bit of inside baseball, kind of what I'm hearing. In fact, I just came from a meeting right before this with a management team talking about AI transformation. But I think what you were highlighting is we just did a really provocative thought leadership piece called The Enterprise in 2030. And that was released very recently. And that had some really interesting insights, Marco. What we did was we went out and polled over 2,000 executives globally across senior executives across all different sectors and geographies. And some really interesting insights came out of there. One big thing was where you were going is that it's clear that AI transformation is front and center. It's clear that management teams now are focused on return on investment. And it's clear that this is a leadership assignment over the next 3 to 5 years as people make these big changes. There's a lot of interesting nuggets in there, which we could get into as we go into the conversation. Changes is clearly here. I think it's a really good thing. And a lot of times people look at AI and they think of it as a productivity or an efficiency play. I think what you're going to see over the next several years is that pivot from not only efficiency and productivity, but innovation and growth, top line growth. And the reason we chose 2030, Marco, is I'm a big believer that you don't want to, look at things in 12-month chunks, but you also don't want to do pie in the sky looking out 10 years. So we thought looking out 4 years, 2030 was a rational way to get executives thinking about how they're going to effectuate change at their respective organizations.
Great. And we will go into more details about the study and maybe tell us what prompted this IBM latest business value study and what core questions were you trying to answer with it?
Well, what we found was, and any thought leadership piece we do, what we do is we study the marketplace. Myself and my colleagues are always in the marketplace talking to clients, and clearly AI, it has been on everyone's mind, right? It's been on everyone's mind for the last couple of years. It's clearly on people's minds. And what we saw was, Marco, there was a slight shift around, I call it the FOMO, was the initial sort of people feeling like they were missing out and they had to do certain things, to the proof of concept era, to now we are clearly in the let's do it era around how do I call it the how to AI, how to AI, and then how do you drive real return that's tied to the P&L. And what we said was we should go out and do a survey to talk to executives around exactly what they're thinking 4 years out. Most companies do 3 to 5 year plans. 4 years out, we picked the middle point and said, let's get some rich data so we could further have conversations with clients around what their respective peers are saying. And by the way, that thought leadership piece has led to not only all sorts of discussions, but bringing clients and industries together to talk about it. So I just came back from the West Coast where we had, a bunch of roundtables to talk about this exact point around, okay, let's take the survey out and let's talk about some broad themes: leadership, growth, innovation, real change, right? With real return on investment. And that's what everyone's struggling with right now. That's what everyone is struggling.
And can you tell us, maybe in simple terms, what separates an AI adopter from an AI first company?
Yeah. Look, I'll give you my perspective on that. I think an AI adopter is someone who's nibbling at the edges. So someone who is doing some stuff, maybe cleaning up some things, maybe not really focused on return on investment, but more on a couple of proof of concepts and see if it's gonna, stick. AI first are organizations that are saying this is a business transformation. So let's look at a function. Let's look at HR. Let's look at finance. Let's look at procurement. Let's look at marketing. Let's look at our sales function and let's redesign it. Let's redesign it from beginning to end. So you create a better experience for your employees. You create a better experience for your customers, and you're able to sort of almost tear things down to the studs and then rebuild something that is going to create a flywheel for you from an organizational standpoint, both from an efficiency standpoint and from an innovation standpoint. So that's the big difference. I'd say I see a split, if I'm being, totally candid, around certain organizations clearly are just nibbling. Maybe they don't have the budget, maybe they don't have the resources, maybe they don't have the desire, maybe they want to be followers and sort of just nibble on the edges to pacify their CEOs or respective boards, versus the ones that are really changing the game are the ones that are leaning in AI first.
When you say companies must redesign work for growth, what does that redesign look in practice?
So to date, and the survey shows this, to date, a large chunk of investment and a lot of the actual gains from AI has come from the productivity side, the cost side, the efficiency side. What we're going to see is more dollars go into innovation and growth to change the actual business model, and that's going to drive top line growth. And if you don't do that, then there's a risk that your business will be either extinct or you'll fall behind and not be able to compete, which is a big deal, right? Which is a big deal. So that whole element of how do I redesign my business to actually grow in this world is now the next step up when it comes to AI. So let me give you a real example. So you may have a services business that needs to interact with its customers in a different way from a sales perspective, and also deliver what they're doing in a different way, their product, their service. AI is going to look at, well, how do I need to deliver that? How is it faster? How is it cheaper? How is it better? And how do we sort of get that out to our customers and explain that value without eroding financial metrics? So that's what we're seeing around it. And by the way, I'm giving you one example, but that's across all industries, right? How is a bank going to sort of interact with its customers differently? Okay. How is a manufacturer going to deal with their customers in a different way? So that's what you're going to see now in the step up in the next 3 to 5 years, where you're going to see more investment dollars. The survey shows that more investment dollars. In fact, the survey predicts that clients will be making about 150% increase in AI spend. And a lot of that's going to go towards innovation and growth.
When you look at the surveys, the findings as a whole, what are 2 or 3 most important findings from your study that boards and leadership should pay attention to?
Well, I'll give you, I'm in front of a board later today, and that question's going to come up. So you're asking me a question that I'm going to answer in a couple hours. So a couple of key nuggets there from the survey. One is leadership. And the survey showed that to really effectuate change, you're going to need different types of leaders going forward. So you're going to have leaders that not only understand technology, but understand the full swath of actually getting people to embrace technology. A client told me the other day, which is a great phrase, create psychological safety, right? To make sure that people really sort of play with the technology and make themselves better. And then also with that mindset around return on investment. So that's one thing, is a different type of leader going forward. And the survey clearly shows that. Another thing that I don't think we talk about enough is the need for upskilling, reskilling. So here at IBM, we focus on that a lot, sort of with our entire employee base, is like, as AI takes hold, how do we reskill, upskill our entire workforce? And I think that's something we as leaders, all of us, need to really pay attention to, because as this technology takes hold, and it's a very, very powerful technology, that we all need to lean in and make sure that we're upskilling ourselves. So I'll give you an example myself. I call it reverse mentoring, but I spend a couple of hours each week with junior staff members that are really deep in the technology, and they teach me. They teach me how to use the technology, right? Be it AI, be it quantum, right? And it's a new way for me, right? I've been working for a long time, but it's a new way for me And, I think they get something out of it as well. But everyone's got to figure out their way now to learn and upskill and reskill, right? Which I think is critical if we're going to actually drive maximum returns out of these investments that we're all making.
Great. And where are you seeing AI first companies measurably outperforming others?
Well, I mean, look, I'll give you the IBM story. So the IBM story, I think, is a really powerful story. Our CEO, Arvind Krishna, has really leaned forward and, made a bold statement several years ago that he wanted IBM to be the most productive and innovative company in the world. And we went on a journey, AI transformation. And this was, candidly before AI was like the term. And we've been on this journey for multiple years now. But we basically looked at key functions. We looked at, about 300 process flows, right? Important process flows that drive the company, and said, okay, which ones are we going to focus on? And we drilled in on a certain number of work process flows, and we reinvented those functions: HR, finance, a whole host of others. And this is all publicly stated. Last year, we saved, from a productivity standpoint, $4.5 billion, $4.5 billion, right? Around efficiencies, which is a big chunk, right, of the cost base. But most importantly, we've created a better experience for our employees and our customers. So the functions we looked at, they're better. Our HR function, for instance, certain things that used to take days or weeks now is done instantaneously. And so you create a better experience. You're able to create, better productivity. But most importantly, you're then able to reinvest that in the business. So we're able to make, more acquisitions, bring in different talent, put more capital to work in research, right? Train our people. So all of that creates a flywheel. And guess what? The company's stock value has gone up dramatically in that period of time. So with that, we call it client zero, but that story itself is a very, very powerful story. And now we're starting to see, stories play out in the marketplace around that. But again, this is something that's really important to us to actually talk about: how do you create real value with real return on investment? And for me, it's personal because my background is finance. So I come from more of a finance ROI type of mentality. I grew up doing, M&A work for most of my career. So now this bridging of M&A and technology and finance together is a real privilege as I talk to clients around driving real return.
Great example. I'm sure later today you'll have similar questions, but if a CEO wants to become AI first in the next 12 months, what is the first decisive move they should make?
So they need to lead it. This isn't something that could be farmed out to the head of technology or to the CFO. My opinion is that the CEO needs to lead. They need to own it. And that's the most successful organizations that are driving real business transformation through AI is where the CEO leans in and it's a top priority for them. So it's not something that the board says, hey, give me an update, and they provide an update, but it's them leaning in. And that's what's really driving the change. And right now, I think now we're in a clear era where proof of concepts and management training and all of that, I think we're past that phase. And we're in this phase now where the CEO needs to lead to drive transformation on both sides of the axis, productivity and on innovation. So I'd say that is the number one takeaway, is the CEO needs to lead from the front on this.
Great. And looking ahead, you've already kind of given us a bit of indication, but where does this evolution lead over the next 3 to 5 years?
So I don't think AI transformation itself is going anywhere, anytime fast. I think this is something that will be front and center for the next 3 to 5 years plus. And I think the AI will get better. I think, we didn't talk about quantum, but I think as quantum sort of comes on, you'll see the linkage between AI and quantum coming together. I think that's several years out, but still, I think certain industries will get, even further redefined, drug discovery, energy, financial services, right? So I think the flywheel will continue to become even more prevalent. So it's one where if you haven't entered the arena yet, then you're falling behind. And with that, it's got to be something that's ingrained into your management system, into the water of how you're driving your management teams on that. So again, I think this is something that it will be part and parcel of everything we do, both business and society. And it's exciting. You don't see these sorts of changes come that often, over the course of one's career or life. So this is clearly one that's going to make things better, faster, probably cheaper, right? And with that comes a lot of transformation. And this is really a business transformation for companies that want to make change.
Great. So very exciting couple of years ahead of us.
Yes.
And really the companies that rethink their operating models around AI will be the ones driving the growth. Neil, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing these valuable insights. That was all. I hope to see you again on some event in person or perhaps on another episode of Tesseract Talks. And to our audience, thank you for tuning in and listening.
Thank you, Marko. Great. Thanks so much.
Great. Bye, everyone.